God, people are getting shot, dude.
Get out of here.
Oh my God, dude.
We're getting fresh details into us right now about the deadliest Islamic terror attack since 9/11 and the largest mass shooting in U.S. history, claiming the lives of 50 Americans. Welcome, everyone, to the Intelligence Report. I am Trish Regan. Hillary Clinton just finished speaking about the massacre in Orlando, calling for stricter gun control. Watch.
It's essential that we stop terrorists from getting the tools they need to carry out the attacks. And that is especially true when it comes to assault weapons like those used in Orlando and San Bernardino. I believe weapons of war have no place on our streets.
And right now we are waiting on Donald Trump, who is about to speak live in Manchester, New Hampshire. You're looking at a picture coming into us from Manchester right now. You know, Donald Trump originally intended to give a speech that would have allegedly exposed what he calls the Clintons' corruption, including some of the questionable deals they made on behalf of the Clinton Global Initiative. However, the focus of his speech has since changed, and today he will talk about terrorism and the need to fight ISIS. We have a lot of information coming into us right now, including new reports that the gunman and his wife recently scouted out Disney World as a possible terror attack. We have more details on this coming up. The gunman, 29-year-old Omar Mateen, traveled to Saudi Arabia at least 2 times, as his former colleagues described him as unhinged, unstable, angry, and homophobic. We're also learning more about the FBI's 2 investigations into the shooter. He had been investigated twice and he was cleared in both cases and not put under any surveillance. He was even able to legally purchase guns and work as a security guard. How can that be? Plus, police are providing new details right now from inside that nightclub. They had 3 confrontations with him and described him as being calm and cool during the rampage. Now, as we await Donald Trump and his comments coming to us live from Manchester, New Hampshire, I want to go to Zuhdi Jasser, the president of American Islamic Forum for Democracy and National Security, and foreign policy analyst Arashari Aramash for an understanding of the role Islam is playing in the terror attack there in Orlando and others throughout the world. Zuhdi, starting with you, is Islam to blame?
Well, certainly a major strain of Islam is to blame. It's not my Islam, especially in this month of Ramadan, as our families look towards atonement, towards renewal and fasting. But it's also, we need to admit and look in the mirror that some of the most heinous acts have been done in Ramadan. Why? Because these militants think that it's going to bring them to heaven. Because these militants attack minorities, attack Jews, attack women, attack vulnerable populations like the gay community, who, according to Sharia law in Iran and Saudi Arabia, or according to the Muslim Brotherhood, should be thrown off cliffs because of their beliefs. And this is why it's important for us as Americans to stop the political correctness and make the dots connected between violent extremism of Islamism and, so, for example, the violent homophobia versus nonviolent homophobia. We can't separate those and deflect into discussions on guns, etc. We need to identify the enemy in order to treat it appropriately and have reformists like myself have a seat at the table. I can't, Trish, have a seat at the table against political Islam if we don't call it political Islam.
Well, and doesn't it mean that the community itself, Arash, needs to embrace exactly what Dr. Jasser is saying and play a role in this? In other words, the community needs to police itself so that it does not have this kind of these kinds of phobia, whether it be homophobia or whether the treatment of women, so that it changes from within.
As a secular progressive, I'd like to wish Dr. and Lieutenant Commander, as a matter of fact, Zuhdi, a very happy Ramadan. It's a month for many devout Muslims like yourself to be with your families and to celebrate and to rejoice. And what this the act of a hateful madman who followed a very violent and a very bastardized strain of Islam, which unfortunately some of our allies happen to promote and propagate around the world, is definitely a cancer within the Islamic community, which happens to be filled with the vast majority of American Muslims and Muslims around the world are good family people who have nothing to do with terrorism and extremism. But This strain of Islam, as Lieutenant Commander Zuhdi Jasser just pointed out, has to be exposed. And again, I call upon liberals and progressives like myself, instead of dividing, and also conservatives for that matter, people on this very network and other networks, instead of creating divisions between two marginalized communities, the LGBT community, my brothers and sisters in that community, and also my brothers and sisters in other communities, including the Muslim community, which is also marginalized. The fact that we're all Americans, the fact that we all believe in certain fundamental American values, including diversity, including freedom, openness, and living without fear, has to bring us together and unite us. In my heart and my soul.
Everyone agrees with you. Everyone agrees with you. I think one of the challenges, though, is that not everyone in the Muslim community is willing to get on board. You've seen this, Dr. Jasser, when you've gone out and you've tried to petition people to really adopt a reformist sensibility. You've met challenges. And you remember that poll that I cited to you a couple of months ago coming out of the UK, where we saw that 2/3 of Muslims in the UK, if they had knowledge about a terror attack, would not report it to authorities. I mean, I think this is what's very disturbing. I mean, while it's wonderful to hear you and Arash talk about the need for change, are you really representing all Muslims there? Do they feel like you do, Dr. Jasser?
Well, I think this is where we need tough love. I think there's a bigotry of low expectations and this political sort of kumbaya that happens after these events, and certainly we don't want to demonize the Muslim community that would be our greatest assets. But on the other hand, when the president goes to a mosque, remember you and I, Trish, were talking back in February, one of my protests about the mosque he chose was its homophobia, was the fact that there was a sermon a year before he went there that was one of the most vicious homophobic sermons at the Islamic Society of Baltimore, and yet there's this bigotry of low expectations that we ignore the misogyny, we ignore the homophobia when we go use the Muslim community as a political prop, and yet when, oh, they attack a gay bar, then that must be a coincidence, when in fact it is connected to the dominant. The majority of Muslims, I agree with Arash, might not be the problem, but the majority of our leadership that control the mosques, that control Muslim organizations, are part of this theocratic international organization of the Brotherhood, of the Wahhabis, of the Islamists, of the Khomeinis. They dominate our community, and we need to stop in the name of being afraid of our allies. And now Iran's an ally too, supposedly. Our allies are feeding this to the billions of dollars, and us reformists have pennies compared to the information industry that's feeding the radicalization of our community.
Dr. Jasser, keep up the fight. Arash, good to see you. Thank you so much to both of you for being here. Meanwhile, we want to